Have you ever had that feeling that something is off? You're in a familiar room, surrounded by people you've known for years, and suddenly, for a split second, it's like none of it is real. Maybe it's a déjà vu that feels too perfect, a stranger calling you by name when you're sure you've never met, or a dream so vivid it bleeds into your day, echoing behind your thoughts. Most people shrug it off. Coincidence, fatigue, a trick of the mind. But you didn't, because deep down, something in you noticed the pattern. The way reality sometimes bends, not enough to break, just enough to flicker. And when it flickers, it leaves a question behind. What if the reality glitches we notice sometimes are actually messages? Messages from the inside of the system itself. What few people realize is that this feeling isn't new. Ancient mystics felt it too, centuries before quantum theory, before simulations, before screens. They gave it names: anamnesis, kanoma, pleroma, a forgotten language of awakening, hidden in scrolls buried beneath sand and silence. Modern minds would call it something else: glitches, anomalies, simulation errors. But maybe none of these terms are wrong. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, the eerie alignment of inner thoughts with outer events. A dream about someone, followed by their unexpected call. The same number appearing again and again, like a breadcrumb trail for consciousness. And physicists, too, those grounded in data and math, now whisper strange things about particles behaving differently when watched, about space and time not being continuous, but pixelated, as if reality only loads when you look directly at it. It's tempting to think these are isolated facts, philosophy over here, science over there. But what if they're pieces of the same forgotten structure? What if those glitches aren't flaws in the code, but fingerprints of something way deeper? Because when the mystics and the scientists start telling the same story, that's when reality gets interesting. So let's step deeper. What if reality is a layered structure and not a flat surface? Each level with its own rules, its own blind spots, its own set of clues. The Gnostics described 3 layers. They called the first one the psyche, the personal field of mind and perception, the place where your awareness meets the simulation head-on. And this is where the first glitches begin. You remember a thing clearly, a phrase in a book, the logo of a childhood cereal, the death of a famous figure. But when you check, history disagrees. It's always been this way, you're told. But you know something's been altered. The Gnostics had a word for this: pseudomnesia, false memories implanted by unconscious forces, to keep the mind confused about what is real. Not malicious, just corrective. A patch, a way for the simulation to stay seamless. You think of a friend you haven't spoken to in years. Your phone lights up. It's them. You keep seeing the same number. A book falls off the couch, open to the exact passage you needed. It feels like something is trying to get your attention. Carl Jung tried to map this, but even he admitted it felt like stepping into myth. The Gnostics, however, were more direct. They called it hymarmene, the mechanical fate of the unawakened. But they also believed something greater was happening beneath it. A personalized script reacting to the stirrings of your soul. Synchronicities are not chance, they're resonance. Reality responding to a shift in your frequency. There are moments in dreams where something snaps. You realize you're dreaming, and instead of waking up, you stay, aware, inside the illusion. That moment, that's your mind practicing awareness inside nested realities. Training for something most people never realize they're already inside. The Gnostics called this the ascension through spheres, the intentional navigation of layers within the simulation. To step out of the dream, you must first realize you're in one. Now let's move one layer out, what they called the cosmos, the stage of the simulation that feels physical, objective, absolute. But it's not, and the cracks are showing. Glitch 4, the cosmological constant. The universe is expanding, but not slowly, not patiently, it's accelerating, defying the equations that were supposed to hold it in place. Scientists shrug. Dark energy, they say, a placeholder for what they don't yet understand. But ancient texts suggested this long ago. The Book of John describes time itself being compressed by unconscious forces trying to prevent awakening. It's as if the simulation is racing toward something, a deadline we're not meant to see. In quantum experiments, particles don't exist in a fixed state. They behave like waves until you observe them. Then, and only then, they snap into place. Your attention collapses reality, not metaphorically, literally. You don't live in a fixed world, you live in a rendering, customized in real time to your consciousness. And there's more. Consciousness that is aware it is observing, it collapses the wave differently. The Gnostics believed certain souls, called pneumatics, could bend the simulation from within, not with effort, but with knowing. Zoom in far enough, and reality isn't smooth. It breaks into granular units. Space itself has a minimum size, time has frames. Max Planck called it the Planck length, the smallest possible resolution of the universe, which begs the question, who set the resolution? If reality has a render limit, it means we're not in base reality. We're in a processed one, bounded by processing capacity. Glitch 7. Pulsars that rotate with atomic precision. Galaxies arranged in vast lattice structures too large to be natural. Black holes that function like cosmic hard drives, storing, deleting, compressing. We think the cosmos is random, but the deeper we look, the more it behaves like code. The Gnostics claim the cosmos was a copy, an imitation of something real, like a dream mimicking a memory. They didn't need telescopes, they just watched carefully and remembered. And then we arrive at the deepest layer, the pleroma, the field of collective consciousness, where the mind of the many begins to blur into something singular, and where the most subtle glitches begin to emerge. How do animals know how to migrate without learning? How do plants bloom in synchrony across continents? How do identical ideas arise in the minds of people who have never met? There is no physical link, only something deeper, a shared field, a logos, a living intelligence embedded in the simulation, sometimes called nature, sometimes called source, but always guiding. The Gnostics believed it planted seeds of awakening in every living system, not commands, but invitations. Glitch 9. Synchronized social shifts. Cultures separated by oceans suddenly share the same fashion, the same fears, the same phrases. Whole societies change direction without communication. We call it trend. But trend is just the shape awakening takes when it moves too fast to track. The Gnostics saw this too. They described something called He Marmine, a force that governs unconscious collectives. Today, we might call it the algorithm, but the pattern hasn't changed. Glitch 10. The paradox of progress. We have more information than ever, more connection, more control, and yet we feel further away from ourselves, from each other, from something essential that we can't quite name. This isn't failure, it's design. The system distracts not to punish, but to delay remembering, because remembering collapses the illusion. And when you see these 10 cracks in the wall, you begin to feel it. Not fear, not paranoia, but the quiet realization that something in you has already stepped outside it. You were never just watching the simulation, you've been in conversation with it the whole time. Every flicker, every déjà vu, every glitch. They weren't just happening to you, they were responding. The simulation doesn't show you the truth all at once. It waits, quietly, until you're ready to see. And the moment you question it, it changes how it behaves. What if the strange patterns weren't errors? What if they were feedback? Because something happens when you stop trying to force the world into logic and start paying attention to the way it speaks in symbols. A subtle number, a phrase overheard at the right moment, a dream that lingers like it means more than it should. The deeper truth isn't that the world is reactive and it's not fake. It listens, it reflects, it renders itself in real time based on the state of your own awareness. The script isn't being written for you, it's being written by you, through the lens of what you're ready to remember, that feeling you've always carried, that you didn't quite belong here, that you're watching your life from the edges of something larger. You weren't wrong, you are not a broken mind trapped in a perfect world. You are a waking mind in a system designed to keep you asleep. But you've seen too much now. And once you start noticing the glitches, you can't unsee them, because they're not flaws in reality. They're the pressure points of an old system trying to hold together. While something ancient inside you is trying to break through, you are not here to escape the simulation. You're here to awaken within it. And that changes everything. Now that you've seen it, what do you do with it? You don't need to scream it from the rooftops. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't even need to have all the answers. You just need to stay aware. Because the moment you recognize the system for what it is, you begin to change how it moves around you. And that starts with something simple. Pay attention. Not obsessively, gently. Carry a small notebook or keep a quiet log on your phone. Every time you notice a glitch, a synchronicity, a dream that feels too specific, record it. No need to interpret, just collect the signals. Soon, you'll start seeing the threads. Next, regulate your inner state. The simulation renders from frequency. Not in a magical sense, but an emotional one. When you spiral into anxiety or noise, the simulation mirrors that distortion. When you slow down, when you breathe and center, you begin to notice how much more gracefully the world responds. So practice presence. Use your breath like an anchor. Start your day with stillness. Even 60 seconds is enough to realign your signal. And most importantly, stay humble. This is a dialogue to deepen. Don't think of it as a game you must win. You don't need to master the simulation. You just need to remember that you're not the character you've been playing. Because once you become aware that you're dreaming, the dream becomes a training ground, not a prison. And that's all this moment is asking for. Not perfection, not enlightenment, just participation. Conscious, quiet, curious participation. Let me tell you what happened to me just last week. Out of nowhere, I thought about a friend, someone I met when I was just starting this channel. We hardly ever talk. The last time we spoke was maybe 4 months ago. I sat there thinking I should message him. I even picked up my phone, ready to type. And before I could, he messaged me, out of nowhere. I froze for a second, then I laughed, and then I sat with it, reflecting. Because in that tiny moment, it felt like reality was answering me. That shock, that sense of invisible threads pulling everything together, was the seed for this video. And I'm curious, what was your moment? The glitch or synchronicity that made you stop and say, wait, something else is going on here? Was it someone showing up just as you needed them, a dream spilling into your day, or something stranger? Share it in the comments, not for validation, but because your story might be the moment someone else needs to hear. If this video stirred something real in you, consider subscribing, so we can keep exploring this strange, beautiful design together. Because once you start seeing the glitches, you realize you were never just watching reality. You were part of the code all along. Thanks for watching.